Hi guys, it's Kelly Taylor here, and I am back with another video for Picket Studios. Today is a little bit of a special video because in this release, I actually have 3 sets that are coming out. Today, we are going to be using one specific set, but I wanted to show them all to you. So the first one here is the Peaceful Christmas Flowers. This is a just a variety of poinsettias, kind of different ways you can cluster them together. This one is the Sweet Spooky Holiday. It has a little cupcake that you can decorate with all kinds of ways. I'm so excited to play with that one. And then the one that we're going to be using today is the Christmas Ornaments and Tags. This one I chose to work with because I think it's the most kind of underwhelming when you look at it, because there's a lot of open space. But if you guys, if you've been following me for any amount of time, you know that I really like to make my cards, so consequently my stamps, as versatile as possible. I want you to get the most bang for your buck. So here, I knew I wanted to stamp all of the pieces. Now, the bow and the poinsettia are set inside the present and the ornament, and this was to make sure that we could get you as many images as possible. But because of that, even though it's a 6x6 stamp set, I have to remove the bow and remove the poinsettia and stamp them up top. And then I just put a little bit of repositionable adhesive on the back so I could pick up the whole sheet with my Misty Door. And then I'm going to stamp this in the intense black ink from Picket. This is safe for alcohol markers, and I will be coloring these with my Copics today. So the reason that I do this is, one, I know I'm going to be able to stamp all the images at one time, and it's really easy to stamp multiples. So I actually ended up stamping 2 of these, and then in addition to that, I stamped some extra presents and some extra ornaments, and I think honestly some extra bows. But we're going to be making, what do we got, 5 cards today, and we'll be talking about different ways that you can play around with this. So here, the ornament and the present box are, there's nothing tethering them in the middle. So they can, if you lay them down, they can kind of get off the track. So the way that I do it is I just kind of like throw it down and then eyeball it. Alternatively, if you wanted to make sure that it was perfect, if you bought the dies, you could die cut it first and then stamp it. So that way you would know exactly where it was lining up. But this way worked for me. So the first way that you can use all of the things in here is to decorate your ornaments and your presents. They intentionally were drawn in a way that you could use them to decorate in many different ways. So what I'm doing here is I have some pixie tape, which is just low tack tape. It's what I use for my die cuts. And I'm using that to mask off the edges. I'm going to add some color to my wrapping paper first. So for this one, I wanted to do just a white background. So I'm adding a little bit of shading to the bottom of the box with my grays. I'm going to leave the vast majority of it white. And then with my masking in place, with my masking tape in place, I'm going to use these little pine branches and some green ink to go ahead and stamp a wrapping paper pattern onto my Christmas box. So there's 2 pine sprigs in here. They face opposite directions. So that way, you know, you're not getting just the same thing and you can use it, different kind of ways. But I'm just going to go through, fill up this box. And then in addition to that, I thought, okay, well, maybe I could use my white gel pen to add dots, or I could use like a glitter pen. But I actually have this. This is Picket has several of these paper splatter watercolors. This one is called Liquid Spicy Mustard, but it actually looks gold. So you just want to shake it up to make sure you get all of the shimmer out of it. And then I'm just using the back of a paintbrush that's kind of rounded, dipping it in, and then creating little different sized polka dots in between my pine to make it just a little bit more festive. So now it has some metallic on it, and those areas are filled in really nicely so that it looks like a repeating pattern. The key to having the repeating pattern is to make sure you're stamping off the edge. So this set also includes this one here, which is actually made to be the ribbon. So it fits perfectly on your box. if you go portrait style, so vertically. There's no need to mask it. You can just line it up and stamp it down. So that way that you can create a little ribbon that you don't necessarily have to die cut. So I will be using a combination of them, ones where I stamped them and ones where I die cut them. But just so you are aware, you don't necessarily have to have the dies to make that work. Again, you guys know I love the versatility. So for the ornament here, which honestly ends up being one of my favorite pieces of all the cards that we made, I'm going to use the mistletoe stamp. And I'm just going to do the same thing that we did with the, I keep wanting to say wallpaper, with the wrapping paper. I mean, I said you could use it to make wallpaper in the background of a scene card. That would be cute too. I'll have to put that in my pocket to save for later. But basically, you can use the tape to do the same thing to kind of mask around the edges and then create a pattern on your ornament. Right now, again, doesn't look super overwhelming, but I think once you see the whole thing pulled together, you'll be able to see how kind of fun that is. So for my mistletoe, I am coloring my berries white, which means I'm just adding a little bit of shadows with my cooler gray colors. Same thing that we did with the wrapping paper over on the present to our left-hand side. And typically when you're coloring, you do want to color your lighter colors first, because I know that I'm going to be doing the bulb of the ornament red. I certainly don't want to be going back in there with what I want to be white when I already have red down and risk, that I'm going to pick some of it up and it's going to look pink. So from there, it is always more challenging to color around objects, which is what I'm doing here. I'm giving myself a kind of darker shadow. I'm not taking that all the way up to the edge because I'm giving myself a little bit of room for kind of like reflective light, bounced light. So I'm, putting down the darkest part and then I'm going in with my next color. If you are concerned about having to color around all of your objects, you definitely could color the ornament by itself and then do the mistletoe kind of stamped and then die cut laid on top, and you would be able to then just place them over top of the ornament and just trim off the excess. That would be a way to get around having to color, in between all of these. And even though I drew them, I still do keep my stamp set to like the left-hand side where it has the acetate sheet, just to make sure I'm not coloring something that's supposed to be a leaf versus, the background. But also, please know that if you do that, if you color something that's supposed to be a leaf, you'll be the only person who knows. Nobody is going to look at your card and be like, wait a minute, I think she colored that red when it should have been green. They're just going to look that it's beautiful and you made them a handmade card and that they're excited to receive that. So don't stress too much about it. I am kind of coloring this so that my lightest area will be in the center. You can color it a different way so that you have the highlight on the edges, but we'll cover that in the next ornament that we color. That was honestly, you guys know I believe in being transparent. That was just too complicated for me to try to figure out while I was working with the pattern. So it just was easier to put the highlight in the center, and I was still happy with the results that I got. So that is why I chose to do it that way. So, yeah, very excited. I cannot believe we have 3 stamp sets coming out at the same time. I feel like we just started on this illustrative journey not that long ago, and I'm so blessed to work with the wonderful people at Picket Fence that, they trust me with their design ideas. They believe in the design ideas that I have, and we can work together to bring you guys really beautiful things that you can, make and give to your family and your friends. And I just think that's the coolest thing. So now that the red is filled in, I'm going to go in and color my mistletoe. Pretty much I kept the color schemes the same because again, if you if you watch my videos, you know when I'm putting them together to take photos of them, I want everything to be super matchy. So I just went with traditional Christmas colors, but you don't have to. You can mix it up any way you want. Now, if last Christmas we released the candy cane and the sweet holiday, like you could also use some of those images, the holly, the oh, give me a second, I'll remember what it is because I drew it. The hellebore, there's a hellebore in there, and some leaves. You could use that to decorate your ornaments. Again, that's something else that I have, kind of in my pocket to use in the future. There's snowflakes in there that would be so cute for a pattern. You could also, I stamped mine in black, but you could, like white heat emboss them or silver heat emboss them and then do some ink blending over them. And that would make beautiful ornaments and beautiful presents. But I am going to show you some ways that you can add patterns without doing any stamping, that you can just do on your own, and how to color them just solid. Just be happy with them as solid images. You don't necessarily have to add a pattern. So I think it's so important to have things that are versatile that you can use together. And I think because the industry has changed so much, where we do have those coordinating dies, it makes it much, much easier to be able to put them together and see. And we are going to have, like, once we get done coloring everything, we are going to have like a little bit of a play session. So you can see kind of some of the ways that I see them put together. But, I just think having the dies does make it easier to do that, because then you can play around with it, but you don't have to be committed. Whereas like before, coordinating dies were really a thing, we were stamping and masking, which I still do. I love a 1-layer card. But then you're kind of committed to how it goes down. So now that ornament is done, I'm moving on to the bow. I did color this bow in several different colors, but I wanted you to just see the general of how I approached it. So you have the center, I added some shading kind of down toward the bottom. And then where the lines are, they kind of show the wrinkles in the bow. I added my darkest color. And then with everything, everything stems from there. Laying down that darkest color, I just go in with my dark mid-tone, add some more shading around, my darkest color and kind of pull it out, extend it just a little bit. Same thing with my lighter mid-tone with the R35. Then for the highlight, you're not going to have as much of that. You'll just have a little bit of white that's left that will serve as your highlight to really help your bow, be more dimensional. I'm also going to use the same red combination to color the poinsettia. So I chose more like golden yellows for the middle. And this poinsettia is also drawn in the same style as the poinsettias in the peaceful Christmas flowers. So you could use this in addition to that, and they would still work very nicely together. I'm a matchy person, guys. I can't change who I am. So for this one, it's kind of drawn, so you're looking at it more of like a side view. So going in and adding the darkest colors, the portion that is kind of facing us is going to be darker because those petals just are not going to have as much light, where the petals that are kind of in the back are much more open, and so they'll have a lot more lighter color. But there is, can you see those little like C shapes? They're kind of like elongated C shapes. Those parts are the edge of the petal, and we do want to leave those nice and light. So that way, when we get to our highlight color and we color those edges, it helps add to the dimensional look of the flower. But this flower is not, you know, it's not as big as the other poinsettias in the Peaceful Christmas Flowers set. So this one might be a little bit more on the darker side if you don't watch how much of the darkest color you put down. So just something to note. So here we're going in with the lightest color, getting the edges of those petals, and then this one will be done. I did briefly want to show you, I did speed this up, but coloring the bow another color. This time I only used 3 colors. You don't have to use 4. I only used 3 for this one. But the formula is the same no matter what color you are using. Is, you know, following those lines for the kind of like the wrinkles in the bow and adding shading there. For the topper, you could do this any color that you would like. I chose to go with silver for all of them. I did 3 different ornaments and I did all of them silver. But basically, I just added my darkest color kind of where it indents. And then I left the lightest area in between white. I didn't color them in completely gray. This is another one where, you know, if you have a silver gel pen or something, you could add some sparkle to it, or a silver marker. So this is the one that is where we stamped the ribbon, and I'm just going to color this one plain because like we have to have some areas that have like the eye can rest. And so I'm going to color it plain so you can see it. And then I am going to add a little bit of a pattern, but the pattern I'm going to add is going to be tone on tone. And I'm going to do it with the markers. So you could do very easily a stripe, a polka dot, a plaid, you know, have 2 different stripes, a diagonal stripe. I am going to do just kind of some random dots so to add to it, but I don't want it to be so busy that it's competing with the other wrapping papers we have going on. So I just colored the screen. I'm going to color the ribbon red. And again, because I know that this one's going to be a vertical present, I am adding the shading kind of more towards the bottom, a little bit at the top, but more towards the bottom. I know my bow will sit on top here, which is why I'm adding a little bit of shading on the top part, because we want to add shading any point where 2 things meet or where one object is laying on top of the other. Just kind of a good rule. It's not perfect every time, but it's close enough, people. I promise you. And so now I'll go back in with this same green marker that I used. And if you don't want something that's a pattern that's as obvious, you could use the mid-tone or even the lightest color, and it would be much more subtle. I went with the darkest color, and then later on decided to add some white gel pen just kind of in between those dots, just to make it a little bit more interesting, but not super overwhelming. And again, any pattern that you can think of to draw, you could do, you know, with your presents and, you know, instead of doing the stamping. So here, this ornament is the one that we're going to color just solid, and where we're going to leave the open white highlights. So I've added my darkest color kind of to each side, the left and the right hand side. And again, I left a little bit of a gap between the edge for that bounced light or reflective light. Then I'm going to go in with my mid-tone, and I'm going to connect the circle kind of all the way around. And then I'm also going to kind of map out where my highlights are going to be. On the bottom left-hand side is going to be where the larger highlight sits. Up top on the right-hand side, there's going to be a smaller highlight. And then because I'm only using 3 colors, this mid-tone is going to fill in kind of quite a bit of that middle piece. And then we'll go in. Oh, you know what? I did use 4 colors. I apologize. Because for the lightest center part, I wanted it to be kind of more of a yellow green. So I did bring in a YG03. And this is one of those things that, like, sometimes you just kind of have to work it to make the colors work together. And right now, it kind of looks a little bit crazy. But don't be hard on yourself. Because once we put the topper on and you can see that it's an ornament, those highlights will make sense. If you're uncomfortable leaving those highlights, that's totally fine. Color the whole thing in, and then we can add the highlights with a white gel pen later, and I will show you how to do that on the one that we didn't leave the highlight. So I use the same greens to color my little poinsettia leaves here. Again, with that color theme, I wanted everything to just work really nicely together, and you know, repeating colors helps them be more cohesive. For coloring the pine, I used 2 of the greens, and I just did a flicking motion just to kind of fill in between. This is so easy to do. Just kind of flick out from the center line. You just have to decide to begin with, are you more comfortable flicking away from yourself or towards yourself? Because that will make a difference. So now that I have everything pretty much colored up, I'm going to go in with my coordinating dies, use that same pixie tape, and now here we're going to have like a little bit of a play with everything cut out. The reason that I do this, so here you have like this vertical present with its little bow. You can put the bow in the center. But also I was trying to figure out how I was going to put my cards together. So here I have a red present, and then putting, you know, you could do the ribbon crisscross and add a bow to the center. You would just need to trim off the excess, you know, and they can be vertical or horizontal to get different size presents. So whatever works for you there. Again, here, this is the one that we did, and then you could add the bow to the top, to the middle. You could add it vertically to the, or I'm sorry, horizontally to the middle or to the side. For the ornaments here, like here they are with the little topper, and there's also a string you can die cut out. Some of them I die cut the string out. Some of them I just stamped them on the paper. It just depended on what it was. And then now, see that one that we colored that we left the highlight on? Like once you get the topper on it and the string, those highlights make so much more sense than just looking at like this large circle that you know what I'm saying? Which I do like that it's a large circle, because you can also use it not even to be an ornament, but to be like an accent, you know, to a sentiment or, you know, something along those lines. Here, I'm going to do the mistletoe, add a little bow to that. This, you know, you can use on its own to be its own focal point. We're going to create a card like that. Here for this one, you know, showing how the different ways you can decorate the ornaments. We can use that little poinsettia along with its leaf to decorate our ornaments. I think that's so pretty. You know, we do that for one of the cards. And you're going to have to excuse my camera for being a little bit out of focus. I'm fairly sure my son has done something to my settings, but I haven't figured out what it is yet. But anyway, so you can add the leaves, you can add the pine, you can just add one or the other. You could also do the topper and then do the bow up there on your ornament to decorate it that way. Maybe you could add the mistletoe and the pine. There's just a lot of different ways that you can do it. And if you see that, I didn't show myself coloring it, and I apologize, but there's a little tag in the set that we can use to add to the presents. You know, just put the little you put your ribbon and your bow on, and then you could just tuck your little tag underneath there, like this here. The tag in the set, there is a 2U stamp that fits on that tag. I'm going to use that here. One of them I stamped kind of sideways because of the way that it was going to hang off the present. It does fit that way, or it does fit where it's just I think it overlaps the bow by just a little bit, but it's still very much legible. So I will be using these to add to my little tags for my presents, or you could use the little tag, you know, by itself if you know, wanted to add it maybe to like the little mistletoe, or, you know, just be creative. That's the whole point of having the elements separate, which I know is sometimes hard to visualize, is so that you can see them together. Here, I wanted to show you how I add the shading if I'm using both of the ribbons. So this is going to be a red present with a green ribbon and a green bow and one of our little tags. So basically I just kind of go in and trace them where I want them to be. And then that way I can go in with my darkest color, and I can create that little kind of like grid so I know where to add my shading. And then the same thing with the ribbon that will be underneath. I kind of marked that with one of the lighter green colors so I can go back in and know where I need to add the shading for that. You could do these any color. This is going to be one of the ones that we kind of color plain, and then we go back in with our white gel pen and add, a little bit of a pattern too. But it's the same red combination that we've been using, very, little highlights kind of on the edges. You certainly don't have to do all of this crazy shading. You could probably just do shading to the ribbon, and, the background of the present would take care of itself. But old habits die hard, and this is how I color everything. So sometimes because of that, I do tend to go a little bit overboard when it isn't necessarily it isn't needed. But I just try to be real with y'all, and this is how I color. So here, this one, the one where we're adding the dark in the center, that one's obviously going to be the underneath piece. And then the one where we're adding the dark to the edges, that will be the piece of the ribbon that's on top. And again, just using that same kind of 3-color blend that we've been seeing for the greens. And then we will lay them over top of each other and add our little green bow. We'll trim off the excess later on for that ribbon. Now, I knew that all of these were going to be pretty clean and simple cards. That's the aesthetic that I like, especially when it comes to like Christmas cards if I'm going to be mailing. So all I did for each of the backgrounds of the cards was I used one of the larger background blending brushes with the Salty Ocean. And then I just added a little halo of blue. I added a little bit of water to the snowflake paper spatter. I almost said paper pouncer, but it's not a pouncer, it's a splatter. And then I'm just going to kind of flick this into the background. This isn't for everybody, and that's fine. You can totally skip it. To add just a little bit of shine. And then also I'm going to use just some clean water. So now we're going to get into the building of the cards, just so you can kind of see them all come together. We're not going to build all the cards together, but I do try to show you the ones that there's something a little different about. So for this one, I am going to build my whole ornament out before I attach it to the card. So I added a little bit of glue to the poinsettia, but I did not push it down. That way I can still slide my little leaves and my pine underneath. And then that ornament was colored the same way as the green one, just without leaving the white space. Remember, I told you I would show you how to add the white gel pen with another one. And then, tucking in those little pines. I think this is so cute, such a sweet little way to decorate an ornament. And then the sentiment for this one says, "From our home to yours." There's lots of different sentiments in this one. We're going to use a variety of them. Merry Christmas, Christmas blessings, season's greetings, from our home to yours. You could send Merry Christmas blessings or blessings from our home to yours. So there's a couple of different ways that you could use them together, because again, that I just, as a card maker, as a consumer myself, I just want there to be 100 different ways for you to use the stamp sets, because I know that it's an investment that, we make into stamps, and I want you to be able to just create so many different variations, of what is out there. So here, gluing it down, I did go a little too far to the left. This one I kept pretty flat. Everything is, just glued down flat. I didn't add any foam tape to it. So this would be a great one to mail. Here, I don't like a white outline on my die cuts. That's just something that is true for me in every card. So I do typically go back in with my markers and kind of color in those edges. That's what you see me doing here. Just so that white from the poinsettia blends into the green of the leaf. The leaf blends into that kind of golden yellow ornament, and so on and so forth. For this one, for the little mistletoe with the bow, this is one of the ones where I just stamped the string. I didn't die cut it. So I laid everything out so I knew where to stamp my string at, and then removed the mistletoe out of the way, used that same intense black ink to just go ahead and stamp it so it looks like it's hanging down onto the card. And then this one, I did choose to add some foam to it. So Picket Fence, their foam is pretty thick. It's made for like shaker cards, so you don't have to cut 2 layers, or if you're doing light up cards. So basically I just cut one of the pre-cut pieces that I had in half, and then I'm going to add a little bit of liquid glue to give me some wiggle room. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to look down directly at it so that I can make sure all of my edges are even. And then from there, because the whole background has a little bit of lift from that foam tape, I'm just going to adhere my, build out my little mistletoe to be hanging down. I'm going to add 3 of these little pieces just to make it nice and full. These are all obviously very clean and simple cards. The one with the 3 presents does get a little, it's a little bit cramped, but it's still... it's probably clean and layered versus clean and simple, but it gives the same kind of vibe. So once I have my mistletoe all together, then I'll just go ahead and go in and add those sentiments. I could have stamped them down flat, but I already had them die cut, so I just went ahead and used the die cuts. For this one, I went back and forth about using the white or the black with the white heat embossing. And I really felt like the black with the white heat embossing kind of grounded the whole card better. So I adhered my present with my little tag down. And then I'm going to do Christmas blessings underneath it after I add a little bit of a shadow. So to the cards with the presents, I did add a little bit of a shadow underneath using those same gray markers, the C5, C3, and C1. And this just helps it so they don't look like they're floating, like they look like they're sitting on something. And then I can go ahead and do the Merry Christmas or Christmas Blessings. Either one would be fine. I ended up going with Christmas Blessings. This one is already put together. It has the shadow. This one I used the poinsettia to decorate one of the presents, and then the other 2 bows. I'm adding some glitter to the ribbon and to the poinsettia, and then I'm going to go in and add just some white highlights to the bows and to the center of the poinsettia. This one is where we're going to add the pattern. So I'm doing just a simple polka dot pattern on the red portion of the packaging and leaving the green just solid. I think this is a really simple one with a lot of impact that, like, for me is I just think it's super cute. So for this one, I added some glitters to both of the ornaments, and then I'm going to use the white gel pen to add the highlight. The key to this is you have to go right over the pattern, because the whole ornament is supposed to be shiny. So even though it feels a little bit strange to kind of go right over what we've stamped, if you want the whole ornament to appear shiny, you have to add the highlight right over those areas. And then I used some rhinestones to just accent our sentiments. This is the Speed of Light one, is the one that I used. So for some of them I used the blue, for some of them I used the color changing ones, and just kind of filled those in. But we're just going to have a quick little look at the 5 cards that we've created here. They all work really nicely together, but they are a little bit different. I hope that, even if this set isn't for you, that this inspires you for your Christmas cards and to see different ways that you can use the things that you have. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.